When watching a psychological horror film, the weapons you tend to see are not actual physical weapons, but tend to be supernatural and psychological. And in our sequence, the killer's mind acts as a weapon, as his wife taunts him as a figment of his imagination. The main settings you will see time and time again when watching a psychological horror film are big houses, forest and woodland areas, warehouses, schools, hospitals, and so on. They create realism for the target audience as they are able to relate to the film on some level. This increases the fear for the audiences as they begin to picture themselves in these positions. In our production, it is set out a big house with a spooky feel to it. Also, in the few shots outside, they are in a garden which has big trees and a forest feel. Quite often, when watching a psychological horror film, there are flashbacks that take the audience back to see why the killer is disturbed and to explain what happened to them in their lives that has led them to become mentally challenged. In our sequence, we have a flashback that establishes to the audience why the killer is disturbed. Contrapuntal sound. This is sound that doesn't match the action that is on screen, e.g. at the end of the Orphan film trailer. Psychological horror films use eerie music, like other subgenres, to build tension and to create suspense. In our sequence, we have used an eerie soundtrack, but have challenged the conventions by not putting any contrapuntal sounds. A disturbed or tormented individual is the main antagonist. He or she usually comes back to get revenge on their victims. The victims can differ, but like any horror film, a high percentage of the victims are female. The use of children as the killers are also very popular, e.g. The Orphan, The Omen. When psychological horror films use children as the killer, again, the victims tend to be female. This could have something to do with the fact that mothers are maternal and the female audiences watching will be able to relate to the character in some way. In our film, the man is the protagonist, but he is also the victim of his wife's haunting, which is a challenge to the convention. Also, both characters are adults, which is a difference to the usual child. Psychological horror tends to not have blood or gore in the films, however, we felt we should challenge this in the flashback, as the wife has blood dripping from her mouth to emphasise the brutalness of the beating he gave her. The narrative story of our piece follows the usual convention of the haunting, but changing the victim to a male instead of a female challenges the code.